The big banks are 1,000, 2,000 times bigger than us. And that's our competition. We have to figure out how to collaborate at scale.
Hello and welcome to Drive. This is the show where we join Chuck in conversation about moving forward. Today's show is all about service to the credit union, what it is, why it matters, and the change that it's brought about. Chuck, thanks for joining me today.
Glad to be here.
So, looking at service to credit unions, for you, it all started way back as you shared in episode 1 at NCCU.
Yeah.
Tell us what that is.
Yeah, so, early on in my career, as I was working with credit unions around North Carolina, it became clear real quick. This was a movement. First of all, credit unions collaborate, and it's one of our core principles, and work together to learn from each other, develop new things together. But the other thing that was striking is it was run by volunteers. So Coastal's board today are volunteers. They don't get paid. Our supervisory committee, which is the audit committee, they're volunteers. They don't get paid. And it's one of the big differences between us and for-profit banks. Part of what I learned was no credit union's big enough to succeed by themselves. Even today, you think about the size of the big banks and how large they are compared to even the largest credit union. And so we succeed being small institutions by working together, sharing common values and philosophy. And we don't compete against other credit unions. We compete here in North Carolina. It's Bank of America, it's Wells Fargo, it's Truist, it's now JP Morgan. All the big banks are in our state, and that's our competition. And we have fun beating them for business most days.
You look joyful as you shared that.
Yes.
So walk us through a little bit of your journey. So you were at NCCU.
Yeah.
On the outside, looking in at credit unions and having
Yeah.
an impact,
Yeah.
and then you flipped to the inside. What did you bring with
So
you?
there was a couple things that occurred. The first experience I had was we decided to do a statewide advertising campaign, and so we raised money from credit unions all over the state, and about $200,000 a year. And we ran newspaper ads and billboards all over the state of North Carolina to make the public aware that credit unions are out there as an alternative to banks and so on and so forth. And that kind of was the first point for me to realize there's power when we work together, because no individual credit union at the time was really big enough, had enough money to go out with a large advertising and public awareness campaign. And then I became exposed to my peers around the country through a series of meetings every year. And over that period of time, I started to realize, wow, this is a big move. I'm not alone sitting here in Greensboro, North Carolina. There's a whole world of peers and credit unions and organizations around the country and even around the world that are part of this movement and this family of credit unions sharing the same values, trying to accomplish the same things. As I like to tell new employees today that come to Coastal, you're not just joining the Coastal family. You're joining a movement.
Is there a volunteer that, as you think back over your career, that is the one that you just admired most or that impacted you as this person is showing up to do something different, and I want to be around people like that?
Bill Smith, who's a board member of ours, has been a board member over 50 years. And back in the 80s, when I was with the league, as I we had chapter meetings around the state, we had chapter workshops, we had a statewide annual meeting. Bill was always there. When I went to national, we have a big governmental affairs conference in Washington every year. Bill was always there. A lot of admiration for somebody that is a volunteer, that's putting that kind of time and energy into it, and knowing he was putting a lot more time into Coastal, being a board member and being part of Coastal's leadership. And that kind of dedication as a volunteer, this movement was built on people like Bill. And to see that, you want to be a part of it. And so, Bill has had an incredibly positive impact on my career, on my time at Coastal, and is just a great, genuine person.
I'm going to ask you to speak on Bill's behalf here. What would Bill say drives him?
He cares about other people. He is one of the most genuine people you'll ever meet. He's very personable, but he cares about making a positive difference in the life of other people. And that's what credit unions are about.
The inspiration that Bill's been for you, where has that made a mark on your impact on the industry? Where have you gone out and been the one that cared about what was next for the people that were a part of this movement?
The inspiration of Bill was it's not about making money, but it's about how can I take my skill sets and use them to help more than just credit unions in North Carolina, or more than just Coastal, or to contribute to this movement and this evolution of this movement over 40 years. It became real for me in 1994. I was at U.S. Central, been there a couple of years, and we had this National Credit Union Foundation, all volunteering our time to figure out, in this case, how do we use philanthropy and the collective financial capacity of credit unions to tackle some of the tough issues of the day. When I first got on the board, the foundation's budget was about $600,000 a year. And my first reaction was, and this is a national foundation? We don't have two nickels to rub together to do anything. By the time I left the board, the foundation had over $10 million a year in resources to support the work. And I had an opportunity to contribute in some pretty big ways to making it happen. And so that money was going to help start Latino and Hispanic credit unions, to experiment with products and ideas for financially vulnerable, low income. And it was just a fascinating organization and body of work. As I've learned over 40 years, that's how this movement has been built. People who share the same values sitting around a table and saying, we share have a common need, share a common problem, a common vision. Let's work together and figure out how to go after it.
You are integrally involved in the highly collaborative process of developing FinHealth.
Yeah.
What is FinHealth?
So if you look at health of you, of me, we're very familiar with physical health. We're increasingly more familiar with the importance of mental health, big issue in this country right now. Well, financial health is a part of that equation. If your financial health is bad, you will struggle to take care of your physical health and your mental health. And so those three are pretty important combined for the whole health of a human. Well, our part, we can't do much about physical health. We're not in the mental health space. We can do a lot in the financial health space. And as a nation, we're not very financially healthy. We haven't figured out how to collaborate yet. We're doing some things. How do we share what we've learned with the broader credit community? A lot of research is needed. Why don't we do it together? And so their executive directors, a dear friend of mine, came up with an idea of a FinHealth fund to raise $10 million to work on collaborative solutions that better equips credit unions like Coastal to help members improve their financial life, regardless of their financial health situation. And she called 4 of us and said, I need leaders to support it and bring $250,000. We all said yes, launched it with $1 million, and this effort is underway nationally to really build the support tools for credit unions like Coastal and others to dive deeper into how we can better work with members in improving their financial health. And there's no guaranteed payback. I mean, there is no ROI on making, and this is what's different between us and banks. There is no ROI on putting $250,000 into this fund and what it may become. But I believe in the importance of it and what it can become.
Chuck, I'm just interested. There's 4,800 credit unions, roughly.
Give or take.
They called 4. Why was Coastal one of the ones they called?
We're willing to do new things. Our willingness to be at the table, to commit resources, to commit talent, to working collaboratively on big ideas, big problems, and so forth. And you gotta wanna be at the table. And I think the key in Coastal's heritage is we wanna be at the table. And we're willing to make the commitment, whether it's financial or people's time or whatever, to be at the table, helping to shape this wonderful movement we're part of.
Chuck, if we're here 5 years from now and we're looking back at the credit union movement, what has to happen between now and then for it to be a success?
So Coastal's close to $5 billion in assets or so. And that's among the top 70 largest credit unions in the country. So we're considered a large credit union by size. The big banks are 1,000, 2,000 times bigger than us. And that's our competition. And so we have to figure out how to collaborate at scale. The challenge today is we run 4,800 teller lines and 4,800 call centers, if you will, however a credit union defines it. We got 4,800 computer systems and so forth. And I think the future is going to require us to, as a movement, to figure out how do we consolidate the things that happen behind the scenes that members don't care about that need to be done in a hyper-efficient way. I think that's going to be required long-term. And it's why we partner with 11 credit unions to create a new digital company to build something we couldn't afford to build on our own at Coastal. Unfortunately, the path over the last 30 years has been merging the small ones. You know, the $1 million, $5, $10, $25 million credit union. The economics get to a point that they're not working, they're not competitive, and the easy out is, well, let me go merge with somebody bigger. I think there's an alternative to that, but it's going to require a lot of leadership and willingness to give up operational control so that we can continue to own the member relationship.
Do you see more and more commitment to the credit union movement among leaders in the industry, or are we struggling to find the right leaders?
I think we're struggling. So there are a lot of large credit unions where cases like mine, I retire, they go look into the marketplace for a successor, and they see this banker over here that may have more experience than, at least in banking, than the people at the credit union, and they hire a banker. What unfortunately happens is there's often a shift from it's all about members, it's all about employees, it's not, our focus isn't on making money, to a transition to something that looks more like a bank. And the more that happens, the weaker the movement is. And so I am concerned that we're not cultivating enough future leaders, future talent inside of the credit union.
If you could click your heels together and all of a sudden there was a magical way to bring up those leaders, how would you do it?
Well, I think it starts at credit unions like Coastal. We need to hire talented young people. We need to teach them cooperatives and our cooperative principles. We need to teach them why we're different and why we're better. And we need to push them hard to learn the business of banking at the technical level.
Chuck, I've heard you talk a lot about your investment in the broader credit union movement, specifically FinHealth.
Yep.
What made you choose to invest time there as opposed to just investing that time in Coastal and Coastal's membership?
Because I know that money and time invested there will come back to Coastal. And so when I'm engaged in the work conversations here, I'll bring back things we hadn't thought of, we didn't know about. And so it always brings benefit back to the contributor of money and talent into initiatives in the credit union.
Well, Chuck, this has been fascinating. I want to jump into a lightning round as we like to end
awesome.
all of our episodes together. Of all the credit unions you've ever visited, who had the coolest office?
Oh, the first state employees credit union branch I ever visited was in the original branch of the State Bank of North Carolina, downtown Raleigh.
Chuck, if we were to do a movie on the history of the credit union movement, what actor would play you?
Tom Hanks.
Great one. All right, you've been an inspiration to many people, but who's your hero in the industry?
So this goes back to 1982. After I went to work for the league, after the new year, I was told, you need to go meet Sis. Well, she's the manager of our credit union. You need to go join the credit union. Her name was Sis Hamilton. She ran this telephone credit union that I joined. It was the first credit union I joined. And then I got to know her, got to know her story. She started work at the credit union when she was 15. She was manager, CEO for over 50 years. She was active at the state level, at the national level, wonderful person, cared about people. You know, she was a sponge for my thinking on what's next and what can we do for members. And it was seeing this simple person, not college educated, go from age 15 to 50 some years later, still CEO of a credit union that's still very successful today. That's the inspiration I've thought about my whole career. It is, simple people making a massive difference in the lives of tens and tens and hundreds of thousands of people. And she had a big impact on my career in the early years.
Chuck, what's the rallying call for the CEOs today of credit unions around the country?
We're a great credit union for people that don't need us. We've got to become better credit unions for the folks that really do need us. And that's what this FinHealth initiative's about. And quite frankly, that is the long-term business opportunity that will keep credit unions around.
Chuck, thank you so much for an inspirational conversation. It certainly is obvious that service to the credit union industry is crucial.
Yeah, it is.
Well, that wraps up this episode. We'll see you at the next one. Thanks for being with us.